Hi, my name is Steve Benke from EcoBeeRemoval.com. We perform live removal and relocation of honeybees. This is part 2 of an introduction to bee removal. We learned in part 1 about bees on the inside and the outside of a structure, and when and if a pest control company is an appropriate alternative to a bee infestation. We also touched on bees found in the structure and what to do if you have wax comb and honey and larvae and thousands of bees. This video addresses the factors that determine the cost of bee removal and what you should look for in the way of a permanent and ecological solution. Okay, grab a pencil because you're going to want to jot down these points to convey them to your bee technician when you call them for an estimate.
The things that determine the cost of your bee removal are: how big is the space where they are? How long have they been there? How high off the ground are they? And how aggressive are your bees?
A bee colony will grow until it reaches its limits. When they reach that limit, they will instinctively begin to feed royal jelly to a bee larva and produce another queen. That new queen will remain with the old hive, and the old queen will fly off with half the worker bees to start a new home. So be careful. Over time, you could end up with more than 2 colonies to remove. A bee colony will divide between 3 and 13 times a year. If that space is small where your bees live, they will divide more often. If the space is larger, they will continue to build until it can be quite large. So it's easy to see. The more time in a larger space, the more likely you're going to have a larger colony to remove. Most companies will give you a best case and worst case scenario when estimating the cost of your bee removal. But let's talk a little bit more about spaces. In the case of a frame wall, the bees will fly up between the studs in the wall, and this is where they will attach themselves and to begin to build the bee colony downward. Now, you see, this is a very large space, but it's not limitless. The limits are the distance between the 2 studs.
In a soffit, you can see the space is smaller, and even a very old bee colony can't get too big unless it's gone into the roof. And then we would consider that limitless. Are you getting the pattern? In the hollow spaces of a block wall, you have a nearly limitless amount of space for bees to build and never have a need to divide and swarm away. A shed floor is not limitless, but it is a very large space, and whereas a mobile home floor is nearly limitless and potentially can be a monster big colony.
Your trained bee removal expert will be familiar with most situations, and once you tell him where the bees are and how long they've been there, he'll be able to give you an estimate, allowing you to shop around. The next important factor is how high off the ground are your bees? Are they on the first floor? Are they on the second floor? The bees, remember, will go to the highest point in any structure, and that's where they will begin. But it may seem like they're entering here at the floor of the second level, when in actuality, they're way up here by the roof line.
If the bees are on the second story, working off of tall ladders, lifts, or scaffolding will increase the cost of your bee removal. But don't be foolish and be tempted with a quick fix and opt for pest control spraying. It might be cheaper on the short run, but cost you much more not too far in the future. Go back and review part 1 to this introduction to learn more as to why spraying does not work. The logistics, danger, and extra time necessary to work off a ladder or lift will basically add to the total cost of your bee removal.
The last factor is something that has grown to be a consideration in recent years with the arrival of the African killer bee, so-called. These are honeybees that have a very strong defense mechanism, and when they hybridize with our domestic bees, they make more of an aggressive bee. If the bees are too aggressive, then more care and greater pains must be made to make sure your situation is handled quickly and safely, including the need for your bee technician to spend more time in a hot bee suit. This potentially can add to the overall price of resolving your bee issues. It's important to note that very few bees are so aggressive that they must be destroyed. So please, if you can, consider live removal and save the bees.
To recap, the cost of bee removal is based on how big is the space where the bees are living, how long have they been there, how high off the ground are they, and how aggressive are your bees.
For more information on the difference between live bee removal and bee extermination, please go to video 3 of this introduction, entitled Removal, Warranty, and Repair. We do get wild honey and wild bee pollen from time to time. So go to our website, ecobeeremoval.com, and get put on the list, and we'll tweet you as honey comes in. All monies go to support our wild bee sanctuary, where we put bees that we rescue to rehabilitate. This is Steve Banky from ecobeeremoval.com. Be blessed.